This is the Horse Radio Network. This is episode 442 of Horse Tip Daily, a different horse tip, a different equine topic, a different equestrian expert every day. Horse Tip Daily brings the world of equine knowledge to you one day at a time. This tip is sponsored by Horse Depot. For all of your custom needs, visit thehorsedepotonline.com. Howdy y'all, Glenn the Geek back with you from Lexington, Kentucky, and welcome back to Horse Tip Daily. And Horse Tip Daily is back after the Rolex break. We took a week off there to do a Rolex Kentucky 3-day event here in Lexington, Kentucky. But it's good to be back, and it's good to have you back, and I hope that you enjoyed your little break from our daily tips here. Well, we are going to do a series this week. Thanks to thehorse.com. They provide a segment for us on Horses in the Morning Show we do here every day on the Horse Radio Network. And they did a segment, so if you listen to the Horses in the Morning Show on a regular basis, then these are probably going to be repeats for you, and you could skip over a couple of them. If you don't, then it'll be a good way to get caught up on a very interesting series that thehorse.com did with us on Laminitis. They called it April Laminitis Month, and they did a series of 4 segments on laminitis and really went through everything. So if you're not quite sure what it is or you just need a refresher course, then these next couple of days of tips will be for you. You'll learn so much, and you'll certainly get a lot out of it, maybe have a couple chuckles along the way too. So these are taken off the Horses in the Morning Show on Wednesdays when thehorse.com does their Horse Health Weekly Report. Christy West helps us out with that from thehorse.com, along with her panel of experts. You'll hear different ones over the next couple of days. So we're going to be taking a listen to the first in their series on laminitis here in just a moment. But first, I want you to think about some of the custom products that you might need for you or your horse. Maybe you could show off those unique barn colors. If you want to do that, then there's one place to go, and that's the Horse Depot. It's the place for all of your custom apparel and sheets and saddle pads or equestrian bags of any kind. They have the top names that you're going to want, including Blue Ribbon and Jax and Fenwick and Tally-Ho. All companies that have been around for a long time and that put out quality products. If you want certain colors, if you want to match your barn colors, if you want to make sure that you have matching saddle pads and breeches and sheets and things like that, then the Horse Depot online are the ones to go to. You can get the cut, colors, and features you want for those spring sheets or protect your saddles, bridles, and show clothes with custom equestrian bags made of the colors of your choice. And don't forget, one of the reasons I really recommend the HorseDepotOnline.com is their customer service. When you're buying custom stuff, you can't afford to get it wrong. You can't afford to be confused about what goes where and what's the trim and what's the piping and blah, blah, blah. You really want to go to a place that knows, and that place is thehorsedepotonline.com. And now, from episode 113 for April 6, 2011 on the Horses and Morning Show, the Horse Health Weekly segment, the first in a 4-part series on laminitis.
First of all, I'd like to say hello to Christy. But Christy, we were supposed to have a gross out Glenn week. However, I don't think that laminitis is going to do it.
It has some gross aspects, but I have some heavier artillery waiting in the wings, but I have some visuals that I need to send you guys for this, and they're not quite ready.
Oh,
so,
good
Oh, great.
photos.
Now she's going to do visuals. That's just what I need. Like, it wasn't gross enough just hearing about the pus spurting across the room. Now we have to see it.
He can't even say the word pus. Did you hear that?
I know. It doesn't come out.
Glenn, you might notice that I put something on your Facebook post this morning. I just told you to live in fear.
Well, fortunately, laminitis is one of those things that could not be kind of gross for Glenn, but I find incredibly fascinating to learn about, to educate people about, because I think that education and prevention is the way, to stop laminitis for, 90% of the cases. So, obviously Dr. Jones is here. Good morning, Dr. Jones.
Good morning.
Good morning. How's Florida?
We had a little cold snap come through last night with that horrible rain that the whole East Coast got. And do you want me to be honest?
Yeah.
I'm sitting with a heater on my feet.
Probably 70 degrees.
It's not 70 yet. It's only going to get up to 70 today. Let's see, the thermometer on my wall, which is, of course, is a little bit misconstrued because of the heater going on in my room here, but it's about 64.
Oh, that's freezing. Girl, I feel you. Because I'm going to tell you what, here in Phoenix, Arizona, it can be 117 degrees, but no matter where you go, you have to bring a jacket because everybody's dang air conditioning is cranked down to 64 degrees, and you about freeze everywhere you go.
Exactly. Everybody's always aggressive with their climate control. In the winter you're wearing tank tops inside, in the summer you're wearing down jackets.
Yeah, exactly. Don't go to a movie theater here in the summer. You'll kill yourself.
And same in Florida.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk today about laminitis, and I read that April is laminitis month. Every month has something, I guess. So welcome to Laminitis Month here on Horses in the Morning.
We kind of unofficially just declared Laminitis Month for the show's purposes because there's a lot of reasons why this time of year tends to see a lot more laminitis cases. But before we get into the reasons why, I wanted to ask you a question, just because almost everybody has a laminitis story, and I'm a little curious as to what's yours.
I refuse to answer this question, so I don't.
On the grounds that it would incriminate you?
No, I don't want to jinx myself. Yeah, I pretty much just starve my horses out here, so make it.
So no friends, no pasture mates, no barn mates that you ever ran into that you saw a laminitis horse?
I worked at the Equine Podiatry Clinic in Lexington, or outside of Lexington, for a summer, actually, and saw the most dramatic cases that you can possibly see. And then being here in Phoenix, working at a veterinary hospital, laminitis is, you see that probably a tenth of the lameness cases, if not more, are all laminitis. And it's one of those things that, God, you just wish you had one answer for the people on how to fix it. But if there was one, I guess we'd all do it. So there's a ton of different ways to try to fix it, I guess. So I don't want to answer a laminitis case as far as my own horse goes because, again, I don't want to jinx myself. But Jennifer, do you have one?
We had a pony that foundered proper. She was a Cushing's pony. And it's kind of dramatic in that she was wearing a muzzle 24/7. She was living outdoors, and the pasture she was on was extremely sparse. But that pony still managed to founder, and we were trying to treat her, and the veterinarian was literally on his way over to the barn to euthanize that pony when somebody in the research field said, we have a spot in our research program and she's a good candidate, we'll take her and, we'll work with her on this new treatment we're doing and see if we can't save her. And some of the treatments were like, oh my God. But they did get her to the point where she could be happy wandering around, and she gave pony rides to little, grandchildren and things. But she was to that point where if she even looked at a blade of grass, she would founder. She had to live on a dry lot for the rest of her life. She got that bad. But she went from the insulin-resistant to the proper Cushing's, so she was way far at the edge. And that was my most dramatic laminitis story. But I think I've had a total of, 4 different horses that were either my own or under my care. One of them was a road founder from concussion. No, 2 of those were road founders, and one of them was a medication withdrawal founder. So I've tried a little of everything, and they all suck.
You did.
Yeah.
And you have some really rough roads around you, huh?
Well, this was back in the 70s, and we lived back where most people didn't even own a saddle. So we just cruised everywhere. The horses didn't wear shoes, and the horse probably had other issues going on that we were completely unaware of. We were pretty clueless anyway. And luckily, both of the road founder cases were relatively minor. Oh gosh, old Silver here is getting a little footsore. Let's have the farrier come out and put shoes on him. And the farrier goes, you got something more serious going on here, dude.
Hey, Christy, so while we talk, first of all, I don't even know what road founder is, but let's just talk about what is laminitis for those people out there that might be listening going, what the heck are they talking about? What is this? Obviously it's in the foot, but what's going on here?
Right, and I think that's a really important point, and Erin, I think, has a great description for us.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a great description, but it's what we all kind of go by. And I just want to, real quick point, Jennifer really covered a lot of things that we're going to cover, so we're going to try to get through this. We'll start off with the definition, basically, of laminitis is inflammation of the lamina. What is lamina? Lamina is what holds the bone inside the hoof to the hoof wall. So you could have just inflammation, no rotation, no sinking, no nothing. I know those are some foreign words to some people who've never heard of this, and still have a laminitic episode on your horse, have all the signs you see of one that rotated or dropped through the sole, and you need to address it right away. The other worst case scenario is the lamina dies off, it can't hold the bone in there any longer, and it either rotates, meaning the front and side portion of the bone comes loose from the lamina, which is attached to the hoof wall, and starts to descend towards the sole because of the amount of pressure the body weight has on those front feet. And it's primarily front feet, but they can do it in the back feet. Then the last would be the horrible one that we all hate to see is a sinker, where the lamina detaches all the way around, 3D view, all the way around from the outside to the toe to the inside of the hoof wall, and the bone sinks and drops completely down into the hoof wall.
To give, so if for people who maybe haven't dealt with that, I guess in a human, if you were to crunch your thumb in the car door and eventually your fingernail falls off, it's the same biological process. The attachment from one to the other.
Somewhat. We've done more and more research and finding other factors involved because that's more trauma-related, and they find that horses that have hoof wall trauma can grow back a normal hoof wall, as opposed to those who have laminitic episodes for some reason are not able to grow back. They have a little bit more of an abnormal hoof wall.
Really?
So it's similar in the fact that, yes, your fingernail peels off, but it's different because of the way that the microscopic parts of the body in the hoof are regenerating themselves.
Ooh.
And, of course, it's a little more significant when you've got a horse that if he walks out of his foot, he's basically walking on his bone.
Yeah.
And he's not really supposed to do that.
No.
Right. Right. At least when you lose your fingernail, you don't have bone exposed.
Ew.
Right.
Yeah.
This is getting
and you're not putting.
Are we getting there, Jamie? We figured we'd gross him out a little bit.
You're getting closer. I think he left.
La 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 la.
So Dr. Jones, we've got the and how I try to describe it to people is like there's a little bone inside the hoof that is shaped just like the hoof, and it's like a little mini hoof inside the hoof, and that's what detaches. It rotates down. So I guess some of the causes and some of the reasons that this would happen, what are they?
Well, that's definitely what we wanted to get to today, and Jennifer hit on some of them, but, the biggest thing this time of year is new spring grass comes up after the nice snow has gone away, and you get this really rich carbohydrate spring grass, and a horse that's a bit sensitive to the carbohydrate overload will eat it and founder. The other thing would be down here in Florida, if you plant what we call winter rye, it comes up very green, full of carbohydrates, and you put your horse on it because you have a very dry desert pasture because all your summer grasses died, they can also founder from that. The other problem is they get into the feed bin. So they open those doors where, again, I'm back to my 2-barrier system. Please have 2 barriers to keep your feed contained and secure, because they open up that feed door with their mouth and turn the knob, get in there, and they start having a heyday in that grain. That's a high carbohydrate overload.
Or they just rip the door off. whatever. That,
yeah. The other things would be the factor of the road founder. You see more in draft horses or in some of the working horses that are carrying carriages and such. You can see that happen, and that's concussion to the foot where it damages the lamina and the lamina die. The most recent now with Mayer's foaling, retained placenta. You need to make sure that you witness the foaling procedure of your Mayer so that you can make sure that the baby came out, stood nursed, but also the placenta came out. So retained placenta. Any kind of sickness, you can get a uterine tear, you can get endometritis from an infection that goes rampant. They get a high fever, and you are treating those diseases, but they can also founder because those diseases are releasing toxins that affect the blood flow of the foot. Metabolic, that was definitely touched on by Jennifer. You get the big fat pony, has too many fat areas. They're called insulin resistant now. The older horse, they have Cushing's that affects their release of the steroid cortisol in their body from the adrenal glands, and that takes over, decreases their immune system and causes founder. You got the Barbaro effect. We all remember Barbaro. He was supporting more weight on one limb than the other when he had a surgery, and they were concerned about him foundering in the opposite leg because he's putting too much weight on that leg. And then, thus he foundered. Fever from being shipped. Horses are going home from the winter circuit now. They're going to go back up north, and those horses could get a pleuritis, a really bad respiratory infection. With high fever again and any kind of bad infection, they can go to founder. Diarrheas from stress, being shipped from one place to the other, or just being in a barn that has a rampant diarrhea problem going through. Those can also cause a founder. So there's any time a horse has got a fever, you want to address it as soon as you can. Don't wait, because there are cascading things that could happen besides just their fever and their initial injury.
My God, there is. That's overwhelming. Okay, people. Yeah, it just sounds like breathing will give a horse founder, and that's what's so unfortunate. Is like the initial reaction in the body of the horse is lamina swell, or release, or do whatever how bad it's going to get.
These my feet are starting to hurt.
Well, we got the solutions for you. Just put them in a bag of ice, and you'll be fine, Glenn.
Okay, good. Sure. I'll try that.
That would be the next thing is, what do you do? First of all, how can you tell your horse? I'm sorry, Christy, I'm taking over your whole segment.
No, you're fine. You follow me? Now, the signs that we see is what they call a sawhorse stance. Okay, what does that mean? It looks like a sawhorse that the carpenters put boards across. And those who have never seen that is basically they're kind of parked out. They want to get off their front feet. Their front feet are hurting. They're throbbing. They're hot. They're painful. They just want to get off of them. Some of them tend to lay down more than they normally do, and that's kind of a key to the clients. But when they go to turn in the stall to go from one side of the stall to the other, they'll still be interested in eating. But when they turn to go from one, like their hay bin to the bucket on the floor for their grain, they rock back on their back hind limbs a little bit and just barely touch their front feet down to move from one side to the other. You bring them out on the pavement, and it's like walking on glass, broken glass for them. They're very sensitive, and it's primarily front feet, again, that we see this in. Those are savvy. They can feel a digital pulse in the front feet. Like an abscess would be the same thing. You get an increased pulse, but this is both front feet are usually affected, and you get this high digital pulse, which, if your horse was just recently done by a farrier, and the farrier, they're all human. I'm not picking on farriers here. The farrier tends to get them a little bit short and quicksome, as we call it. They might have that same look as a founder. So, in my history I'm taking from the client is, were they recently done by the farrier? Yes, they were done 2 days ago. Oh, well, it may not be founder unless they were just in the feed bin, or you just put them on new green grass, or they just had a fever, or, if it was just the farriers out there, they might have just gotten trimmed a little short, and that's all. And you just tell your farrier, hey, last time you were out, they were a little ouchy for a few days, and then the farrier knows. But if it's not within a time period the farrier was just out there, you might have one that's starting in a laminitic episode, and the sooner the better. Obese horses, they're a founder waiting to happen. And what I mean by obese horses, the ones that have the big crusty neck and they're not a stallion. They get the big fat rolls behind the shoulders. They get the big fat pockets on top of the tails. seriously a founder waiting to happen.
Yeah. And it's funny, I mentioned that too. One of the horses, a couple of weeks ago, we were horse shopping for a student, and we went out and saw a Morgan gelding that literally looked like that. And I said, what do you feed it? Oh, well, it only gets 2 flakes of alfalfa twice a day, and then it gets a lunch hay, and then it's getting all this grain. I was like, you are 10 minutes away from Founder, from Laminitis, sister. You better stop feeding your horse. It's just amazing. People just shove all this food to these horses that clearly have, a sensitivity, I guess, or, basically they're just big and fat. And
you can almost relate it to like a diabetic if you want to. It's not truly exactly the same cascade, but you can say, look, diabetic people can't go out and just eat whatever sugars they want to all the time. They have to watch their diet, and that's what these horses need to do. They have to have their diet watched for them by people that are getting educated on it. I had a gentleman say, so I am almost killing my horse with kindness. And I said, yes, sir, you are. So he had to now separate her from the gelding, because the gelding looks great, but she is such an easy keeper. She breathes air, and she gets these fat pockets. So he has to separate them now and feed her differently.
And that's what people, I think, are doing, are killing their horses with kindness. So they think, oh, I'll just feed him more. He'll be so happy when he eats, and you're killing your horse. Sorry. Go ahead. Christy, take over,
I think it's an
please.
important point, too, also when you're talking to your vet about your horse's diet, I started to say your diet, I meant your horse's diet, is to really understand what you're feeding your horse, because a lot of people don't realize, you have so many flakes, you have so many coffee cans or scoops or whatever that you're feeding, but you may not know how much you're actually feeding your horse. And weighing your feed, I think, is a really important thing. And also just to make sure, if nothing else, that you're on the same page with your vet or your nutritionist when you're talking to them about your horse's diet. I have just a little story. It's actually not related to horses. It's related to dogs, but you're going to laugh anyway. So I had a friend who had a basset hound, and this is probably one of the largest basset hounds I've ever seen. She was huge. She's a basset hound. None of them are skinny, right? But he was talking. I happened to go with him to the vet with his dog one day. And you say, well, she's really kind of heavy, and she's, how much are you feeding her? And he says, well, I'm only giving her a cup of food a day. And having been to this person's house, I knew exactly what he meant by a cup, and I looked at the vet, and I looked at him, and I said, okay, you guys are on 2 totally different cups. You're talking about a measuring cup, and you're talking about like the Tasty Freeze Big Gulp, 4-cup cup.
Exactly. And back to you weighing your hay. Your hay, when it comes, you might get a bale one week that weighs 50 pounds, and you might get a bale the next week that weighs 75 pounds. So you really need to know what those individual flakes are weighing out to.
Yeah, well, I do that when I carry them around. I'm like, oh, this sucker is heavy. You only get 1. But these are lighter, so I can give 2 of those. Just, you don't have to put it on a scale to know that, granted, it's probably better that you do, but you don't have to put it on a scale to know, like, oh my gosh, this is very, very, very heavy and concentrated hay and thick, as opposed to a light, fluffy, airy flake.
Right.
And maybe you don't have to measure it all the time, but there may be some value in weighing it kind of at the beginning, just so you sort of kind of develop your eye or your arm strength to go with, okay, I know this is about this much weight. Sometimes it can surprise you if you've never weighed your stuff before.
Yeah, a fish scale is what I've seen works beautifully. You hang it from the ceiling, you put a hay net underneath it, and you just gather up the edge of the hay net, put it on the end of the hook of the fish scale, and it gives you the weight. It's fantastic. Yep, easy, quick and easy. So treating them, there's many varieties of treatment, but, lately we're going back to icing. We used to stand them in streams many years ago. We went away from that. Now we're back to that. Icing the feet. In fact, I've got a mare right now that's at the hospital. They're icing her feet because they sewed up uterine tear on her, and they're worried about her getting Founder post-surgical, post-uterine tear peritonitis, because you got to think about that. Uterine tear was dumping, fluids and stuff in the abdomen that's not normally in there. So, she could possibly Founder. So you've got all these things you got to, keep in check that you want to try to prevent, but also we use it for treatment. So icing the feet has been a common thing to do.
How long? When you say icing the feet, what is it? 10 minutes every hour? Or what
no, they did a study, and they went out and they checked the horses' feet that stood out in the Canadian snow, found out that they don't get frostbite. So they could stand in that ice all day long, 24 hours a day. It's just whatever your maintenance and management can handle. But as often as you can possibly do it to keep the heat down is my verbiage.
And this is primarily a preventive, okay? This isn't,
and we do it actually when we see
really?
When we see laminitic episodes, we do it at that time too. We get the heat out of the feet. The other idea is there's Banamine that's used. There's DMSO that's used, either IV or they tube it to them. These are...
that's horrible, too. God, I am one of the sensitive ones to DMSO, and by God, I would find a way to splatter that stuff across my face, and I would taste garlic for a month.
Oh, yeah. But all these things there's no recipe that says your horse foundered for this reason, and we're going to do this because that's going to keep them from getting worse. We could do the same protocol on Jennifer's horse. It has the same kind of founder as Glenn's, and I'll lose Jennifer's. I'll keep Glenn's, and then Jamie comes in with hers the third time, and I do, gosh, it didn't work on the last one, but that's what I've always seems to work, and hers also, passes away. I can't say I'm never going to use that protocol again because I've had other horses live on it and others that don't. We still don't know enough about the disease to know what triggers some of them to get tons worse or continue to rotate. And the whole process is we're trying to get the lamina to stop its insult. And if we can get the lamina to stop at a certain point, the rest of the lamina will not die off or will not have its insult done to it, and the foot won't rotate more or rotate at all or won't sink. And that's what we're trying to do, is just stop the process.
So is there a special, say you've got a little bit of laminitis, it hasn't gotten too crazy yet. I know that there's a million different ways that people recommend that you shoe a horse. What do you think is the best way? I
say, first off, you need to have a farrier that's willing to work with your veterinarian and a veterinarian willing to work with your farrier. If you do not have that, you've got a recipe for disaster right there. After that, it depends on the type of founder, and I'm going to defer this to who we're going to have speak in a couple weeks regarding foot care, which I completely respect this gentleman, and I run by my really toughest cases by him, and he's given me some excellent advice, and a lot we've won, and there's been a few we've lost, unfortunately, but the wooden shoe is becoming very popular, and I'm loving it, and I think it's doing a fantastic job on some of these chronic or bad founders.
The wooden shoe?
It's not the be-all and end-all, the wooden shoe.
Okay, I think I just read something about that. Interesting. So the wooden shoe, and then I know that people, you got to have this round and then that round. Well, you know what? We're going to have to talk about this a little bit more again. Obviously, you can go to thehorse.com/laminitis to find out more. We're going to have to wrap it up here in a second, but obviously extremely important that your vet and your farrier can work together and communicate, because you got to take x-rays and the farrier's got to look at it and be able to fix it and be able to tweak it the way the vet says. So, I find that is a difficult yet important part of having your horse team around you. Would you agree?
Absolutely. If you do not have that working relationship, you need to find two of them that will work together, whether that means firing your farrier or firing your veterinarian. Two of them need to work together. And they got to put their egos aside or their differences aside or whatever it is that they're having problems with the other person and try to make the horse number one at that moment in time.
You sound, Dr. Jones, she sounds like she's speaking from experience.
Yeah, well, we all have growing pains, and I'm sure there was times where I came across a little bit belligerent, and then there's times where I've run into a few people that wouldn't listen to my advice. And so, I have a great group of farriers. I don't have one. I have many farriers that I work excellent with here in Central Florida, but it's taken years to nurture that relationship. I'll be honest. It's taken many years to nurture that relationship, and it's a respect you get for each other, and sometimes I've asked them to do something, and they looked at me and said, "Are you sure?" And I said, trust me on this, and if it doesn't work, I'll chalk it up as it doesn't work, but let's try it. And they're willing to try it. And if they look at me and say, "Oh, this is absolutely not going to work," then I'll say, "Okay, let's do it your way." All we can do is try it. And the owner's got to understand that everything's a trial basis, because not every single laminitis has a shoe that fits it.
Absolutely.
Christy?
And one thing I wanted to bring up back to the team approach is that it's not just your vet and your farrier, it's your horse owner too. And
yes,
where that comes into play is a lot of things. I mean, some of it's nutrition, like we said. If you got an overweight horse with a metabolic related laminitis and you're continuing to throw him twice as much food as he needs, it doesn't matter what you do to his feet, he's probably not going to get a whole lot better. Or if they say strict stall rest, you say, oh, but he's so tired of being cooped up, and you turn him out in the pasture for a day or for half a day, and his feet are still really fragile. You just undone everything that's been done. So it's very important. It's not just the vet and the farrier, but the owner carries a very large responsibility for taking care of this horse and getting him through this laminitis too.
Question, Dr. Jones, before I let you go, because Christy, I think you hit the nail on the head. How many times have you been out to somebody's farm and you say, oh, they'd actually need some antibiotics, so let me get you some, and they go, wait, no, I already have some. Would this work? And they bring out the antibiotics that you prescribed last time you were out there.
And had left over because they didn't use them up. It's just like the medical doctors say, you have to finish your antibiotics. Even though you're feeling better, you have to finish them.
Exactly. I don't know how many times we ran into that. I'm like, why are we prescribing you medication if you're clearly not even going to bother giving it? So, guys, owners, take care of your horses. Do what your vet says.
Client compliance is very big, especially when it comes to laminitis. If you want to save them, you really need to work with everybody.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, this has been awesome, very educational and exciting to me to talk about it, and I love having you all on. And we will have you on again next week. And Glenn, you will lose your lunch. We will find out a way.
We're going to have to work on a way because we're going to be working on laminitis topics related to laminitis for the next couple of weeks. And next week, we talked a little bit earlier in the show about grass and laminitis, green grass, and it's not just necessarily green grass. Sometimes the brown grass is actually very dangerous or even more dangerous. So we're going to be talking about that next week, grass, hay, and laminitis, and then we're going to get into the metabolic issues and then into the shoeing treatments.
It's laminitis month.
Yeah, that's right. So in 3 weeks, when their feet start falling off, that's when I'll be at Rolex, and it'll be high day for you guys. So this was very fascinating. Actually, I found it very interesting, too, and I know Jamie could go. She could talk. She is a health weenie, Jamie and Jennifer both, so they could talk about this stuff forever. But we do have to run here. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Of course, it's thehorse.com. And if you want to learn more about laminitis, it's thehorse.com/laminitis.
Thank you to thehorse.com for continuing to help us out here on Horses in the Morning, providing us the tips. We really appreciate it, and they do a terrific job with it. And of course, if you want to find out anything about horse health, thehorse.com is the place you want to go. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll be back again tomorrow with another new expert and a different horse tip. And don't forget, you can listen to Horses in the Morning every morning from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time at horsesinthemorning.com. Well, we'll be back tomorrow with the second part in the Laminitis series from thehorse.com on Horses in the Morning, and we'll continue to do that through we get through all 4 parts. We hope you find this helpful, and maybe it'll help save a life of a horse out there by listening to this series on laminitis. It is one of the things that you have to be concerned about if you have horses that have any kind of outside grazing activity at all. So we'll be back again tomorrow. And have a great day, everyone. Wear your helmets and be safe.
The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements of guests or their opinions. Use your own judgment when listening to the tips provided by the experts on Horse Tip Daily.